Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Catholic Education Foundation podcast number 7. This podcast will feature Louisville's new leader of its Catholic Church, Archbishop Shelton J. Fabre. The Most Reverend Shelton Fabre is recently installed as the 5th Archbishop of Louisville and the 10th Bishop of Louisville. And then we'll have Mr. Rich Lecklider. Rich is in his 9th year as the president of the Catholic Education Foundation of Louisville, having retired as the chief financial officer of Kindred Healthcare. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. How's it going?
Great. Archbishop, welcome to Louisville.
Thank you.
I'm sure there's a lot of folks who are excited to meet you and assist you in your new role. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family that would help us get to know you a little bit?
Yeah. I was born in New Roads, Louisiana, and lived in Louisiana all of my life until being positioned here to Louisville, with the exception of 4 years of seminary college in Belgium. I was the 5th of 6 children born to Luke and Teresa Fabre. My mother was an elementary school teacher. My father, a brick mason. I went to Catholic Appoint-Capee School in New Roads, graduated in 1981. Went on to St. Joseph's Seminary College in Covington, Louisiana, finishing there in 1985. Bishop Stanley Ott, the Bishop of Baton Rouge, which was my diocese, sent me to study at the American College in Louvain, Belgium for 4 years. Came home, was ordained a priest in 1989, served in various positions in Baton Rouge. Then in 2007, I was ordained auxiliary bishop of New Orleans. Then in 2013, named the Bishop of Houma-Thibodaux, and 2 months ago, was installed as the Archbishop here in Louisville.
Fantastic. It's a lot, Rich.
It's a pretty good run.
It is a pretty good run, right?
I think so.
Well, so can you tell us a little bit about your initial impressions of the Catholic Church here in Louisville, Kentucky?
I think my initial impressions are very, very good from the, the masses I've celebrated, the confirmations I've celebrated, the schools that I've been blessed to visit. I think that the faith here goes very, very deep. I've been very impressed with the quality of Sunday worship, with the prayerfulness of the people, with the elements of the Mass, with regard to confirmation, the preparation of the young people. So I think my first impressions have been very, very positive. I think that the faith is planted very, very deep here, and people take their Catholic faith very, very seriously, and that inspires me, and I will rely on that as I go forward.
So I have a question. I was at your installation, and one of the musical pieces was a gospel piece.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And there was a woman who sang it, and she was phenomenal.
Yes.
And there was a lot more of engagement with the song and people kind of up and clapping, something I've never seen in the Catholic Church in this area. Mm-hmm. Is that something that happens in New Orleans more often, or is that something that maybe you want to see maybe happen more in Louisville, or just curious?
Well, I think that is definitely, there are many spiritualities in the Catholic Church, and an element of Black Catholic worship is that spirituality, more of an engagement. So it's not right or wrong; it's just a different spirituality. And certainly in New Orleans and in Louisiana, where there are lots of Black Catholics, we have a richness of their spirituality. So I very much enjoy that, but I recognize that as part of that spirituality. There are different spiritualities in the church, and we are invited to be a part of it. But my hope is that people will always feel joy in the Lord, and that joy in the Lord can come from celebrations of the Eucharist that are more lively, like that one, but joy in the Lord can also come from celebrations of the Eucharist that are more staid. So there is no one way to feel joy in the Lord. That is an authentic way to feel joy in the Lord, but that is not the only way. So in answer to your question, is that something I want to see? I want people to be joyful in the Lord, however they connect to that joy. That's the most important thing.
That brought me joy. I loved it. Now, I talked to some others that were just kind of taken back. I hadn't seen that in a Catholic Mass before, but I thought it was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I'm a music guy, and I just thought that was fantastic. So, Rich, the Archbishop serves as the vice chair of the Catholic Education Foundation Board. Can you tell us how the foundation works with the Archdiocesan team to expand its impact?
Yeah, thanks, Teague. It's a great question. Archbishop just went through his first board meeting last week, and that was, get a kind of a feel for for the foundation and its role here in the community, so much appreciated. And we have this incredible connection to the Archdiocese of Louisville, and I'm talking about the foundation and its mission. When I came to the foundation several years ago, that's when we, I think, came together with the diocese in this really cool way, in that all of the pastors in all of our parishes agreed that 1% of their revenues would come forward from each parish, whether you had a school or not.
Okay.
And that would provide additional tuition assistance for families in need. And at that time, that equaled $1.3 million a year. And at that time, that doubled the amount of funding.
It was a game changer.
Oh, it changed everything. And that's when things really took off.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do any of that stuff. Our pastors came together and said, we got to do something to help more families in need, and they did. It was very courageous, by the way. That wasn't easily done. And I think ever since then, our mission has just kind of exploded.
Yeah.
And so the relationship we have it's extremely important, and it's a reflection of the church in which we believe, right? We all come together for a common cause. In this case, the education and the formation and the transformation of our young children.
Now, Rich, for listeners who may be tuning in for the first time, when you said when that just took off, what does that mean? So that means more tuition for more kids. We're getting more kids in Catholic schools, correct?
Yeah, correct. We had, I think when I started at the foundation, we were helping, and we were impactful before I got here, for sure. We were helping about 1,400 kids a year.
Yep.
And we immediately jumped to 2,400.
Yeah.
And now today, we're at 3,400, an all-time high number of kids that need us to be able to go to a Catholic school. So how God blessed are we for that?
Oh, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Now, Archbishop, you've talked publicly about the importance of Catholic education. It's a priority in our church. Can you share some of your thoughts with our audience on how you feel about Catholic education in general?
Well, I think Catholic education is a very important ministry of the church. I think its formation of our young people academically and spiritually is something that is very, very important. I know the great benefit that Catholic education has provided across the country. You know, I know the great benefit of Catholic education and the leaders of Catholic, people from Catholic education who are very much involved now in the state of Louisiana in positions of leadership, and I'm sure it's the same here in Kentucky. So I strongly support the ministry of Catholic education. I think right now it is critically important that young people be formed to come to know the wisdom of the church and the wisdom of the church in answer to questions of life today.
Okay.
So I think to academically form young people, which Catholic education does in a wonderful and great way, but to also form their hearts and their minds, presenting to them the importance of a relationship with Jesus Christ and strengthening that relationship and letting them know how that relationship can be of benefit to them right now, but also into the future. So I think that, the academic excellence of Catholic education with regard to leaders in the community is a great testimony to the importance of Catholic education. And I also think, forming good citizens and forming people who are close to Jesus Christ, who bring the wisdom of the church to bear on the very important questions that we are facing today, not in a judgmental way of others, but to simply say, this is the Jesus Christ that I know, this is the wisdom faith gives me in these circumstances, and I invite and share that with you as well and invite you to come to know the Christ that I know.
So Catholic education is huge in our area. with them from the high schools and all the different grade schools. What I have found, I've lived in Nashville and in LA in a little bit. So what I've found that our area is a much higher number of Catholic schools in other areas. Is that true? How was it in Louisiana, in New Orleans?
New Orleans, New Orleans, like Louisville, has a lot of Catholics.
Okay.
The Catholics percentage is really, really high. And where there are lots of Catholics, one would expect that there would be lots of Catholic schools.
Gotcha.
So New Orleans has a lot of Catholic schools. Baton Rouge has a lot of Catholic schools. Even Houma Thibodeau, where there are a lot of Catholics, have a great number of Catholic
Makes
schools.
sense.
And certainly in Louisville, there are a lot of Catholics. So
Sure.
the number of Catholic schools would reflect that.
Okay, and that makes sense. So Rich, the foundation has had a great run over the past several years. What are some of the things the organization is considering to expand its impact even further under the Archbishop's leadership?
Yeah, we're actually thinking about a lot of different things right now. We're kind of at this crossroad, I think, in our 26-year history to consider where to go next. And let me amplify that a bit. First of all, legislatively in Kentucky, there was some legislation passed in 2021 called Educational Opportunity Accounts, which essentially would provide funding to low-income families that want to go to a non-public school, among other things. And that is currently in litigation right now,
Mm-hmm.
so, and hopefully that will prevail in terms of the constitutionality of that particular statute.
Right.
That when that is resolved, if you will, that could create a huge new pool of funding through a tax credit program for businesses and individuals, in which I think our foundation revenue could double. I think there's a $25 million annual pool under this program. As large as we are in this space across central Kentucky, I think we could garner 20% of that. That's $5 million a year. That would be explosive for us on yet another front, right? So we could expand our outreach in our elementary schools.
Mm-hmm.
We're also considering, well, what would we do at the high school level? Because today we essentially fund kids K through 8.
Right, and the high schools kind of do their own thing.
And the high schools have to step in thereafter.
Mm-hmm.
What if, under the new kind of thinking, we could supplement the high schools to help our lowest income kids? Because look, at the high schools, they have their own constraints as well.
Sure.
So if you're a family that really struggles financially, and the tuition's $15,000 at
Right.
St. X High, and they say, well, we can come up with 8
Mm-hmm.
or 9,
Mm-hmm.
that family can't fill that gap. That's a great award. It's an awesome award, but they don't have any money to pay otherwise. So in that case, I think for us, we would kind of step in and supplement that family and say, okay, we'll come up with whatever balance needs to be covered so that the kid can in fact go to a Catholic high school. We've never done that before. And I think that would send a signal to families that we're going to accompany you on this journey from K through 12, not just K through 8. So that's a big deal.
Well, I've had friends avoid Catholic grade school because they know that their son or daughter is going to want to go to a Catholic high school.
Yeah, we see that a lot more and more in families, young families who, let's say the first child's 4 years old and
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to figure out that pathway in pre-K, for example.
Right.
We've met with lots of folks that look at our program and say, gosh, this would really be helpful to me to be able to go to St. Nicholas or St. Stephen Martyr or wherever. But as a parent, they have fear, right? They have a fear that one day, 9 years later, they can't fulfill that dream.
Yeah, because it's a big jump from
It's
6,
a
7 to
big-
15.
and it's a big jump, and they're worried about what the availability of funding would be
Sure.
in the 9th grade. Again, if we could come through and say to them when that child is 4 years old, hey, we're going to accompany you, if you qualify, we're going to accompany you K through 12. I think that's a game changer in terms of people that enter Catholic schools
sure.
in kindergarten.
Well, and the other side of that, too, is a lot of these grade schools have a multiple child discount. You don't get that in high school. So if you have a son and a daughter or a few kids and then they're all in high school, I mean, that number just becomes insane. Archbishop, what's your feelings on all this? I mean, I don't know if this is a new issue for you, or what's your feeling when you hear Rich and I talk about that?
Well, I'm grateful for the Catholic Education Foundation. I know many dioceses that wish that they would have something like the Catholic Education Foundation, and it was a great gift when I came here to Louisville to know of the existence of the Catholic Education Foundation and all that they were doing to help parents to be able to afford a Catholic education for their children.
Right.
And I'm grateful for all that they do. I'm also grateful for all of those people who work in Catholic education, the teachers and the administrators and others who make themselves available to Catholic education.
That's a great point.
Because there can be some sacrificial...
There are.
There's some sacrifices on their part as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not denying, I know that on the part of the parents there is sacrifice for Catholic education, but I also know that those who work in Catholic education, they very often are sacrificing as well.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason they're sacrificing is because they too believe in Catholic education. So I'm grateful for all that the Catholic Education Foundation does, and hopefully, we will be able to accompany those parents K through 12, and I want to thank parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and everybody who help families be able to place their children in Catholic education. But I also want to thank the teachers and the janitors and the administrators and everybody, all the staff of Catholic education that also sacrifice because they too believe in the gift of a Catholic education.
I can't tell you how many teachers I've talked to and I've asked, why Catholic school? You could make double at a public school. And almost to a T, every single one comes back and says, because I can incorporate faith in the classroom. And it's amazing how important that is to our teachers. So I'm really glad you brought that up because that's a great point. I mean, you would agree with that, right, Rich?
Oh, absolutely. We, in fact, at our Salute Dinner event in March, we have a community service award that we give out annually, and it was a very easy pick. This year, we honored all of our Catholic school teachers, counselors, and administrators and staff in all of our Catholic schools throughout Central Kentucky for the heroic work that they have done and continue to do during the pandemic. And I love Catholic education. It changed my life, period. It was the best gift I ever got. But what this community saw during the pandemic validated everything we always believed about Catholic education.
Right.
To put the child and the family first and to ensure that faith formation and what I call faith transformation among our young people. And I couldn't be more proud of those folks for doing so.
Totally agree. Now, Archbishop, as you're getting to know the Catholic Education Foundation, how are they different from what you've experienced in Louisiana?
They are different from what I experienced in Louisiana in that they exist.
Okay. That's fair enough. That's a good start. Okay, that's a good start.
Louisiana don't have
right, okay.
Catholic education.
Yeah.
So the biggest difference is that they exist and they are there.
Yeah.
And I'm not belittling Louisiana. They do a lot for tuition assistance in all of the dioceses, but I do think that many of the dioceses would wish that they would have a group like the Catholic Education Foundation, totally dedicated in a granular way
right.
to funding tuition assistance. So I would say the very fact that they exist, I'm very, very grateful for that.
That's fantastic. Now, one piece I did know about you before you became the Archbishop of Louisville is the writing you did for the Pastoral on Racism, Open Wide Our Hearts. Would you hit on that a little bit, why that's important in our church today?
Sure. Well, it's obvious that today there's great question and unrest amongst the races for many, many reasons. And at the very heart of that document is the church's teaching that we are called to respect the human life and human dignity of every single person. And it's about a conversion of hearts.
Right.
To coming to see one another as brothers and sisters, coming to see and to respect the human life and dignity that God has given to each and every person, regardless of their race or the other circumstances of their lives. And doing that first begins with a conversion of heart, which is at the very, very center of that document. You know, we're very much into public policy. We're very much into laws, all of that is critically important, and we must continue to devote time and effort to bring that about. But as wonderful as it is, laws will enable us to live together, and that's good. I'm not knocking that. But Christ calls us to more than just tolerance.
Sure.
Christ calls us to truly love one another as he loves us.
Right.
And I think that the document invites us back into that reflection and into that conversation. How are we today called to love one another regardless of race? How are we called to see the human dignity of each and every single person regardless of their race or the other circumstances of their lives, to love as Jesus loves. As I always say, it's very easy to love others as I want to love them. That's wonderful, but that's not what Jesus said.
Right.
Jesus said, love one another as I have loved you.
Correct.
Jesus is the standard, not me. And so that conversion of heart will hopefully lead us into loving one another. Dr. Martin Luther King, as important as he was to, the civil rights movement, his real goal was what? The beloved community, where people did the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
So he saw that laws have a role to play, but his real desire as a Baptist minister, remember, he was a man of great faith. Very often we forget that. His real goal was that beloved community where we would love one another because it's the right thing to do. And I think at the very center of Open Wide Our Hearts, it calls us back to that, to love one another as Jesus loves us. So I'm lifting up that document. If you haven't read it, please do so. There's a study guide and all kinds of information with regard to Open Wide Our Hearts. So at the very center of it, though, is the heart, and that conversion of heart that will be the fulfillment of the law. Jesus said, I came not to disband the law, but to fulfill the law. He was talking about religious law, but I think that's a powerful image for what we are doing today. We want to fulfill the law with love for one another.
Look, I think this is why the Catholic Education Foundation is so important, right, Rich? You guys are helping provide a different sort of environment for kids in these schools that they wouldn't otherwise receive.
Yeah, it's a completely different environment centered on faith.
Right.
Centered on family and service to others. And I think, and I've seen this in my own life, I've seen it in my 4 children's lives that have gone through Catholic schools, that coming together of purpose and that coming together of community, and that's a very important concept in Catholic education. That's life-changing. It's life-lasting. Nobody can take it away from you. And the relationships that you build in Catholic schools will last forever. Guess what? The relationship you develop with Jesus, that lasts forever too.
100%. And again, why I think this is such a perfect connection is because of the environments that the Catholic Education Foundation helped create in these classrooms that these kids wouldn't otherwise have. It really shows you, it kind of throws racism out the door. When you start at a young age, you don't know any better. You know, that's my classmate. That's my best friend. And they don't have that situation without places like the foundation. So once again, why it's so important. But Rich, I know your team is hard at work providing tuition assistance awards to the Catholic school families in need for the fall term. Can you tell us how that's going?
Yeah, thank you. It's crazy as ever. Michelle Dorman, who runs that process for us, is very busy at work. And look, every year it gets a little crazier because people are learning more about the foundation. They're learning more about Catholic schools, particularly during the pandemic. It was kind of front and center, if you will. And they're asking themselves, well, gosh, is that something that our family should look into? They're asking that question. And they may have never asked that question before, but they are now in larger numbers. So we're seeing our application volume go way up, as you would hope. And the challenge for us is can we meet that opportunity to get that family to join a Catholic school community? You know, we have our homegrown slogan, the answer is yes.
Right.
And we mean that in all sincerity for our families. And by the grace of God, the last 7 years in a row, every single student who applied to the foundation and qualified for assistance, in fact, earned an award, every single person. And that has been, I think, the thing that's most changed the trajectory of the foundation for reasons that I talked about earlier in terms of the diocesan support of what we do. But now the question is, can we continue along with that family on that journey to fulfill that promise yet again? Mm-hmm. So it's always a race to the finish in terms of the awards, how they're formulated, how they're funded, how much money we can raise. It's a race, mm-hmm. and we enjoy the race. And hopefully for the 8th year in a row, the answer is yes.
Archbishop, what comes to mind when you hear Rich say that everyone that qualified for an award received one? What comes to mind when you hear that?
What comes to mind is my great gratitude for the work of the foundation, because that does not come about without a lot of work and dedication and commitment. So I'm deeply grateful to the Catholic Education Foundation. And when I hear that, my thoughts are thanks be to God, but my thoughts are also thanks be to the men and women of the Catholic Education Foundation and their benefactors who have made that happen. So that's a sign of great commitment and a great passion for what the Catholic Education Foundation is all about.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Archbishop, I can't thank you enough for your time, for your guidance,
My
for
pleasure.
your willingness to be involved and help the Catholic Education Foundation.
Absolutely.
It's such an important part of our city and our faith. Rich, at the Catholic Education Foundation,
The answer is yes.
thank you so much.
Thank you.